Hi, guys. Shawn and I have some exciting news. We have created official Twitter and Instagram accounts for the Oh Mr. Sheffield podcast. It is at Oh Mr. Chef Pod on both platforms, and that is Oh Mr. Chef with 2 F's. So Oh Mr. Chef Pod. Check it out. Follow us. It's going to have all the latest and greatest from us about this show, and we hope you like it.
Now enjoy the episode.
The Flushing girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
I go, Miss Fine.
No, you're right. Nuchslep.
Nuchslep. I was right.
Yeah, Nuchslep. Okay, sorry. All right, here we go.
You do it. You do
now
it.
I'm going to start.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 4 of Oh Mr. Sheffield, our podcast about the nanny. I am Toria Sheffield, no relation to anything. And I'm here with my co-host, Shawn de Pasquale.
Hello.
And this episode is called, say it with me, Shawn.
It's called the Nuchslep.
Nuchslep.
Nuchslep. Oy vey. The Nuchslep.
Which is a Yiddish expression. I was telling Shawn, it's like the wasp half of me is fighting with the Jewish half of me. It's not letting my mouth say the word.
Nuchslep.
Nuchslep.
It is a Jewish expression. It's Yiddish. So I guess we should start with our Yiddish expression of the week right at the top, because that's what the show did. The title of the episode, which is episode 4, by the way, if you're listening. Technically episode 5 of our podcast, but it's
Who's counting? Who's counting except Shawn?
So anyway, the Nuchslep is Yiddish. What does it mean, Toria?
It means a tag-along.
Yeah. So like an annoying, it's basically like a Yiddish expression for a third wheel, which I just think they didn't have that term yet. But it's like, yeah, it's like someone who like is not part of your group, but is always there and won't leave you alone. Mm-hmm. And the episode perfectly encapsulates the title, because Fran believes that she is being a Nuchslep when she is forced to join Maggie on a date. With a character who returns from the pilot, surprisingly, played by good old Cyclops.
Little Jimmy Marsden.
Oh yeah, little Jimmy Marsden shows up.
James Marsden, who plays Cyclops in the X-Men franchise, is billed as Jimmy.
Yeah, Jimmy.
Yeah,
he was young. He couldn't be James Marsden. That's like his dad. Yeah. He's like, I'm Jimmy Marsden here. Zippity zoop.
And he's super adorable. And again,
this is extra. Read all about it.
Oh, I hate you, man. But so he again is the waiter that Maggie kisses in the pilot episode. She shares her first kiss with him. The character's name is Eddie. Yeah. And basically, the episode starts, Niles is feeling very under the weather. We actually have a gay joke, I believe, where Niles says, I'm feeling a little queer, Miss Fine. And she's like, oh, well.
Finally, you're coming out of the closet.
Yeah, something like that. Which, again, we discussed this a little earlier. It's definitely a gay joke, but it's not necessarily a mean-spirited gay joke, but still, well, we don't need it. We don't need it anymore.
He's not gay, right?
Yeah, it's
the character?
The problem with it, no, Niles is not. Though right. I keep thinking that I think if the nanny was made today, he probably would be. Mm-hmm. Maybe not. That's sort of stereotypical, because he's so sassy and catty, and he's like, Niles is bitchy, and it's so delightful. So that's playing on a very stereotypical gay trope, which actually maybe wouldn't be the best thing anymore.
Right. Which is what I think the show. That's where I think the show missteps. And it's, in retrospect, is it's like, oh, they're just making a joke out of the idea of like, oh, being gay is like like the fact that he would be gay is the butt of the joke. Like that's the punchline.
You're right. You are. That's very fair. But so we start on a joke that is thankfully now very outdated.
Yeah, very outdated.
And
but we move past it pretty quickly. So he's not feeling well. He says, I'm feeling queer. And she says, oh, you're gay. And he says, no, I'm feeling like ill. And then she's like, oh my goodness. And she tells him like right away, she's like, take the day off. Like, I'll take care of everything. I'm going to order Chinese food for the kids.
Yeah, and she actually says to Mr. Sheffield, this will be a cultural experience. We'll order Chinese food so they can learn how Jewish people eat.
Which
and so
it's true. I mean, it's a Chinese food trope, but it's great.
Oh yeah, it's definitely from life.
Great. Yep.
But so she goes off and is ordering Chinese food for the kids. And meanwhile, a little B plot, which was just so cruel to Cece. We cut to Mr. Sheffield in his office, and he's like, Cece, like, I have a birthday gift for you. Like, close your eyes and sit down. And she's like, oh, Maxwell. And he goes,
and he also tells her to put out her hand.
Yeah, put out her hand, and then gives her this long speech about how a woman as wonderful as her shouldn't have to come home to an empty home alone and really should have someone in her life. And so,
we've set up at this point now, we're 4 episodes in, of like, she likes Mr. Sheffield. She like wants a relationship with him. I mean, she seems to have like a little bit of, you know,
I think they're for sure
bigger qualities to her in some of her comments about like wanting the life that Fran is living right now, is the, you know, like the fancy life that he has. But
and they're for
which
sure,
I don't quite
think,
get, because she comes from money, right?
Oh well, I think they're dating. Like, they're definitely doing it.
Are
like
they?
There have been. Yeah, like, I think that's clear. They are romantically involved, but she wishes it was more serious. Because I remember, I think it was like in the pilot, she calls and Mr. Sheffield goes, oh, I'll take it in the library. And then Niles goes, see, like, Miss Babcock loves being taken in the library. And Fran goes, oh, I'll bet. My impression of their relationship is like, they're romantic, but he would never consider marrying her. And like, her ultimate dream and fantasy would be like, oh, Maxwell will propose to me. So they have very different expectations for what's happening.
Yeah, very different perceptions of what the relationship is.
Which is why it's actually cruel when then instead of giving her an engagement ring, he brings out a small dog. Niles actually brings out on a leash. He's clearly giddy at how mean this is. And it's just this great moment where it's like Cece's face drops. She tries to seem appreciative, and then the dog instantly tries to bite her, at which point Fran saunters in, and the dog loves Fran. So it was just a delightful moment,
which makes sense because it was Fran's real life dog that they used in this episode.
Chester is
Chester Drescher. It's kind of great.
Chester Drescher. But so basically, we got derailed with the B plot, but basically the Chinese delivery guy is Eddie, and he and Maggie instantly lock eyes, and it's a very like, oh my gosh, like I'm so happy you're back in my life moment. And he asks her on a date, and this is the central conflict of the episode, or actually one of several. But Fran has to go ask Mr. Sheffield if Maggie can go on the date, and at which point he says, only if you are her chaperone. And that's how we circle back to the whole Nuchslep incident or motif. And they go on this date, and it's just, you gotta love Fran Drescher. She's so funny, zingy, very charming, and it's this huge juxtaposition to Maggie, who is like still very shy, a wallflower, has no idea what to say to Eddie, and it's like painfully awkward, but also very funny, which unfortunately leads to, I would say or maybe fortunately, the real conflict, which is the next day at breakfast, where so many of our scenes take place. Eddie calls.
Let me walk you through all the sets on the show real quick. So there's. Sorry, go ahead.
Wait, no, Shawn, take it away. But so Maggie is she's just bemoaning the fact that she feels like she performed terribly on this date. She's so boring. She's not charming like Fran. Fran tries to reassure her, at which point Eddie calls, but he calls for Fran. Fran takes the call, is super uncomfortable, hangs up, and is basically like, he wants to see me this coming Friday. So it would appear that Fran was so charming that she actually may have stolen Maggie's boyfriend or potential boyfriend. And of course, Maggie is very upset. And I guess for the second time in 2 weeks, storms off, leaving their delicious breakfast buffet.
Yes. Well, and we skipped the date though, right? Because the date happens before Fran gets the call, right?
Yes.
And so
I breezed over it.
So Max or Mr. Sheffield is basically like, okay, you got to go out on this date with them. Like you set this whole thing up. You need to go chaperone. And she's like, I don't want to chaperone. It's like such an outdated concept. He's like, too bad. And then she's like, well, the real reason I don't want to go is because I don't want to be like the Nuchslep. And that's where you get the title of the episode. She doesn't want to be like the hanger on. And he's like, well, too bad, go. And so she goes on the date with them, and she ends up being very charming. She's herself, and she's very charming, and she's making like great jokes, and that is sort of what I think leads Maggie to believe that he's calling for with romantic interest in Fran. Because she is like kind of charming, and Maggie sort of clocks it in that scene that like, why is she doing all the talking?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so now Maggie is livid at Fran, storms out, and it kind of has this nice moment where at first Mr. Sheffield tries to calm Maggie down. It's sort of like, calm down, like don't be rude to Miss Fine. Yeah. And Fran counters with, no, like let her express herself. It'll be good for her. It'll be good for all of us, which I actually thought was sort of a very emotionally mature thing. And that is like kind of like the crux of what Fran brings to this family, which is a warmth and an understanding, even though, of course, it just ends up hurting Fran even more. Like, I think she ends up crying and it's like, see, we all feel better now. But so Maggie is upset. She's in her room, and there's another scene that happens right after this, which is very cute, which is basically Mr. Sheffield is like following Fran around the house while Fran is tidying. And they're again having this very like husband-wife back and forth where she's like handing him stuff to hold while she folds. And they're very sort of like working together very well. And he's kind of like, well, why do you have to be so charming anyway? And honestly, it's more like you're her friend sometimes than her nanny, which gives Fran the idea of like, yes, like I'm more like her friend, like that's genius. So Fran basically goes upstairs, talks to Maggie, and is like, kind of trying to bribe her like a friend would. She brings her some chocolate, and she's like, what does she do? She like basically is like, you don't have to worry because we're friends and there's a girl code. We're girlfriends and there's a girl code.
Yeah, she basically says like, look, I would never do this because like you're more important to me as a friend than any boy could ever be. So like I'm gonna break up with him. And like, Grace is like, or Maggie's like, oh my God. She's like, you would do that for me? Like, because she, as she said, even in the last episode, she looks up to Fran, like she clearly just wants Fran to like her and all this stuff. And so she, and wants to be liked. And so she's like flattered by this. And Fran's like, yeah, of course. Like, of course I'm going to do that for you, no big deal. So they invite him back over so that she can do that. And, and he goes, he has a great line where she's like, look, I just like, I thought you wanted to date me. And and he goes, no, you're old enough to be and she goes, watch it. And he goes, sister. And so he's like clearly not into it. What he really wanted was just to use her, basically. As, like he wanted to use her to be a casting director and get his headshot to Mr. Sheffield because he's an actor and he wants to act. Which is cute. It's a cute way to resolve that.
Well, to his credit, also, he's like, I wanted to ask you and not Maggie because I really like Maggie and I don't want her to think that I'm using her.
Yeah.
And Fran's like, oh, but you're cool using me. And he's like, well, yeah.
Yeah.
But so, and it's just, turns out it all been this big misunderstanding. Maggie had been, worried for no reason. And it also, this whole episode has this running gag of people spying on other people from the butler's pantry.
Yes, this is a great gag.
Yes, and it's like, it's the kind of thing where it's like Fran will open up the door and Niles will literally like have his ear to it in this very exaggerated, hilarious way. And then I think at the end of this scene, when Fran is quote unquote breaking up with Eddie and then kind of gets broken up with first, she goes and opens the door and the entire family, including like Mr. Sheffield and all the kids are there like listening with a glass to the door.
Yes.
So a really nice little callback moment. But so yep. It's another episode where you're kind of like, what would the plots engines have even been if there was no teenage daughter? Because I think that is two, let's say, of 4 episodes, 3 of 4 episodes so far that have really centered around Maggie or some conflict with Maggie, right? There's the pilot, which is the first kiss. There's the debutante ball, and then there's this.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess you could have pulled off the debutante ball, I suppose, with Grace. Like it could have just been some other party, maybe. I don't know, but
yeah, yes.
Like, but yeah, I don't really understand. Yeah, I would love to see what version of this show would have existed if there wasn't this older child for them to clearly pull so many stories from, these interactions. And it gives Fran and Mr. Sheffield more, I think parenting styles don't really start to, in most functioning relationships, don't really start to differ until you get to like those teenage years, and it becomes a much more difficult, it's not just like changing diapers and making sure the kid doesn't like fall into the pool and drown. It like suddenly you're having to make choices, like moral choices as parents of like what, and like that's where I think people can differ greatly. And this show does a great job of using that to generate a lot of conflict between, Fran and Mr. Sheffield. Because it's like he's obviously a more buttoned down kind of guy, and she is a woman, or buttoned up, yeah, and she's she's a woman who's not nearly as buttoned up, so she has like an edge over him as far as like, well, look, I am a woman, so I'm this is your daughter, not your son. And then also obviously like Maggie's most always going to want to do the thing that Fran is advocating for, because Fran has always got the more fun point of view of things, the more freedom for the child.
I 100% agree, especially with what you were saying about basically like conflict arising over teenagers more when you're parenting. But I was also going to laugh because I was like, wow, don't we fake like we have raised children really well?
Yeah.
like just acting like, oh, well, I mean, we're both childless adults, but we have clearly a lot of opinions on what
I'm
it's
old
like
enough
to
have a lot of friends that have children, and I've watched them raise them from children and they're all now teenage girls and boys, and they're all going off to college and shit. So, yeah, I mean, I was speaking anecdotally for sure, but I think that, I mean, I just think it's like, you don't need to have kids. It's just like a logical thing, right? Like there's like just way less problems that you can have. I mean, you can't have too many differing opinions on like how to change a diaper or when, or, like
there's just higher stakes. There's higher stakes for the differing opinions the older everyone gets, because it's like, when can the kid drive at night? Can the kid drive with friends in the car? Like those are seemingly small decisions that are, I mean, I feel like
that could have considerable consequences.
Yeah.
I was never allowed to drive with friends' parents, anyone that my mom didn't, especially friends' older brothers or anything. Anyone my mom didn't personally know and have been in the car with, I wasn't allowed to get in the car with.
Wow. I think that's actually a step up from even my mother.
Well,
wow.
My mom's sister died in a car wreck when she was like, I think my mom was like 14 at the time, and her sister was like 16, 17. So I think that was like kind of, I mean, now this was also like, there were no seatbelts in that car. There was like a lot of things that I can remember growing up and being like, but mom, it's different, like cars are better. But it, it was also like, you could only push it so far. And then she'd be like, well, when your sister dies in a car accident, then I guess you'll raise your children different. And I was like, all right, I won't.
So my Jewish mother's version of that is whenever I had kids over for sleepovers, she would lock the basement door because she was convinced that in the night, somebody would get up to use the bathroom, go to the wrong door, and fall down the stairs. It's because when she was a kid, they had this like housekeeper lady that would come to the house like once every 2 weeks. And she was an old lady and it happened to her.
So was she okay? I shouldn't laugh.
She broke a hip. She like broke a leg or something. She broke a bone. God. It was bad. It was, it was bad. And so forever after, my mom is very, very aware of people accidentally going down the wrong door and falling down the stairs. And she would not only lock the door, but she would like she would lecture about it before. So it's like just lock the door and don't say anything. Don't waste all our fun chill time
explaining this horrible story
and begging my friends not to go down the wrong door.
Do you have anything like that? I don't know that I've had, I mean, knock on wood, I've been, obviously very blessed. Like, I don't really have anything that I'm like, oh, this happened to me and it fucked me up forever. And now I'm going to make sure my kids like know this one specific thing, No,
I don't have anything as high stakes as either of the things that that both our parents, I have little things where it's like, when I see someone like put a purse on a kitchen counter, I think it's like the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Only because my mom and aunt, they constantly talk about like how your purse is the germiest thing that you own, and it's there's small neuroses that I really
Do they have those little table hook things that they carry around with them? Because my grandma had one of those.
If they don't, it's only because they don't know they exist.
Oh, yeah. My grandma found, she was big on this. This is not news to me, this purse thing. So she found there's this little thing that they started making. It's like a little metal like hook basically. And you like put it on the end of on the end of any table in any restaurant, and it just kind of rests there. And then you can hook your purse to it so your purse doesn't touch the floor. And she used to carry them around with her. She had them in her car. Like, so she never had to touch her purse to the ground.
I gotta send this to all the older women in my family. So it's more stuff like that. And like, so I actually have my roommate I've lived with for many years, does not come from a Jewish family, does not have any of those neuroses. And it was like a real rude awakening when I realized that like other people don't have the same
neuroses.
Neuroses that I just grew up thinking were like common sense things. And, and now my roommate, she'll be like, have you ever gotten sick from your purse? And I'll be like, well, who's to say? Maybe there's plenty of times I haven't because
you don't know that you haven't. You don't know that you haven't gotten a cold because of something on the bottom of your purse that you put on like your couch or something. I mean, who knows? We've gone way off book. What was your favorite line of this eepisode of The Nanny?
Okay, let's come back to this.
By the way, we're still talking about the Nuchslep of episode of The Nanny.
For those who actually stayed through that whole
Jewish therapy
session, we'll get back on track. Favorite lines. I really liked this scene when Niles had made these amazingly fancy Belgian waffles for breakfast, and he like gives some speech about how like his father's father had made them for some king, and Fran walks in and goes, "Oh, Eggos."
Yep.
And then he goes, "No, Belgian," and she tastes one, and she goes, "Close," as if like he had clearly been aiming for Eggos.
Yeah, and they weren't quite as good.
Yeah. Just a delightful little moment.
That's a good line. My favorite line of the episode really comes down to setup and delivery, but it's when they're in it's when they're arguing about Fran kind of making the whole date about her, and Maggie's like, you made the whole thing about you, and she's like, I can't help it that I'm interesting. Like, it's not my fault. Like, I wasn't doing anything. And then Niles comes in and he goes, "It's the telephone for you, Fran." And Fran goes, "Me?" And he goes, "Yes, you." you. And he hands her the phone, and it's such a good delivery. Like, it's such a good delivery. I love that. I love that so much. And then I also like the random old lady in the movie theater when she says her old husband is overhearing Fran talk, and he says, "What is she saying?" And the old lady turns to him and she goes, "She's talking about the old days when she had a life."
Yes. Yes, that was a running gag throughout this episode and theme is that, like, you know, Fran feels like those days are behind her, and she doesn't want to accompany Maggie on the date because she feels like a loser doing it. But yeah, that was a great dynamic. I also really loved that not only did Cece not only did the dog not like Cece, but I think in the last scene of the episode, Cece saunters in and she's wearing this huge fox fur around her neck. And there's this second where everybody thinks she has killed and skinned the dog. And then the dog comes, you know, running in right after that. But and I think
there's a gasp. I think there's an audible like,
yeah. And the very last line is Fran picks up Chester the dog and goes, "Be careful, she might need a muff." It was just so silly, and you know, just paints Cece as this Cruella de Vil type so much. And
it's so it highlights how easy it is to paint. Like, they didn't do much work to paint her as that. She just had to show up with fur after being introduced as not liking this dog, and it was very believable. Like, oh no. Great.
And so real quick, since we have gone again so off the rails this week, I'll take us to nanny facts. This is maybe on an interesting level. It's probably only a 4, but it goes well with this episode. Maggie has 2 boyfriends. 2 actors played Maggie's boyfriends in this series that like went on to become well known. There was James Marsden, who we've already been introduced to, and Barry Watson from Seventh Heaven will eventually appear.
Whoa, he was the brother, right? Like the oldest, the oldest brother.
Yes, he was the big brother, and he was one of those actors who there was like a hot second where it seemed like maybe he was going to break out and do something beyond the WB. He was in like Teaching Mrs. Tingle, but it never materialized.
Didn't work out.
No.
Sorry, Barry.
Unlike little Jimmy Marsden.
Well, you know, maybe he needed a name glow up like Jimmy. Jimmy was like, "Hey, now I'm a serious adult. I'm going to be James Marsden." You know, maybe he needed
Baron
like Watson. Yeah, I don't know what Barry is short for, but yeah,
I'm going to Google
Bartholomew.
What is short? What is Barry short for?
Right?
Let me see.
Or is that just a name? Hi, I'm Barry.
Oh no. I don't think it's short for anything. Meet Bartholomew.
Bartholomew. Yeah. Hey, it's me, Bartholomew.
Bartholomew Watson might have been in an X-Men franchise.
Right. Or Bart. He could have gone with Bart.
Bart's no, you know what? I think ultimately, I don't think there's anything Barry Watson could have done to make himself more castable. Oof. Sorry, Barry.
So I guess Barry Watson's also not going to come be on this show.
Oh God, I hope he doesn't listen. That's
Add
so mean.
To the list.
I was just making a joke, Barry.
He's like, I was on that show once. I should listen to this podcast series about it. Oh
no. And okay, so we covered our Yiddish phrase.
Who's the Cece? Who's the Fran?
Okay, I'm gonna be very complimentary, but also very egotistical to us both.
Okay.
I think we're both the Fran because I think we're both very charming when we want to be.
Yeah. I agree.
Not charming all the time, but we can turn it on.
Yes. But if one of us has to be the CC, it's probably me. I guess. No. Do you like dogs?
I love dogs. You don't like dogs?
Yeah, so then it's me. Yeah, I'm not really a dog person. I mean, they're fine. I don't like when I hurt them, but like... Yeah, and I think they're really cute, you know, but like it's too much work for me. I don't want that much work.
What about cats?
There's no work involved.
So you like cats?
I mean, I would rather have a cat just because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to put any effort into the relationship, you know?
So you're just not a big animal person. I guess I didn't know this about you, but I see you being, I guess, more like a baby person than an animal person.
Yeah, I'd rather have a baby because a baby you get back what you put in, you know, like, and eventually it's going to talk to you and stuff one day, and like you have like a real relationship with it. A dog is as needy as a baby, but then it just stays a baby forever. And you know, and a cat is like an actual pet, like a fish, you know, where it's just like, yeah, it exists. It's an animal that lives in my home, and it's mostly domesticated, like, except when it isn't, because it's an animal and it doesn't crave my attention, like, or even care. All that.
We're so different, because I think the benefit to a dog is that it's a forever baby. And you get the best part of the baby without all the bullshit, you know, adult, you know, having to have a conversation with it later and hearing its opinions.
Oh,
you just get the unconditional love of the baby.
No, I like seeing all of my effort into shaping a baby into a human being develop into a human being. Whereas like the best you're getting out of a dog is like, it can like push those buttons where it knows how to talk. Have you seen those dogs?
Oh, yeah. Have I seen them? I mean,
that shit amazes me, man. I follow like 50 of them on TikTok. I could watch those videos all day.
No.
Outside, go. It's like, whoa, how does he know to do that? What?
No, I could not have a different opinion on what is attractive about child rearing. But I guess that's why I'll be like my mom, where it's like all she does is lament the fact that we're no longer babies.
Well, so there you go. I'm definitely the CC of the episode. When it comes to animals, you know,
and you do love wearing fur.
I do love my furs. It's true. I love my mink coat. This was a great episode of our podcast, and it was also a great episode of the TV show that our podcast is about. Where would you put this episode? Where would you rate this one?
I think that this one is third or fourth place for me so far. I think for me, My Fair Nanny is the front runner, then the pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, no, this might be four. I take it back. This is four. This is lowest on the totem pole for me, but still very good. But I like the other three better so far.
Oh, interesting. See, I think I put this one over episode 2. I like this one a little bit more than episode 2. But marginally, you know, they're all still great. But My Fair Lady and the pilot are just really, they're so far the strongest we've seen.
I really hope we get into this level of detail by the time we're on like episode 70, where we're just going to list off, like, I mean, 65, 67, 43, 42, probably right tied with 34, 19.
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, God willing. That
will become this will become an hour and a half to 3 hours every week as we list off the order.
It'll be 5 minutes of talking about the episode, 15 minutes of talking about Jewish psychological issues that we have for being raised by Jewish parents. 26 minutes of listing off what episodes we like in what order, 13 minutes of me describing how the sets were built.
Okay, this has been wonderful. Thank you guys so much for listening. Shawn, where can they find us?
Online. You can find me at Shawn Writes on Twitter, where I'm constantly tweeting about this show and talking about it and how excited I am to be doing it. And where can they find you to learn about the show?
I think start by following me on Instagram, which is just Toria Sheffy, and it's 2 F's and a Y. So Toria Sheffy.
Yep. And as always, you can listen to this podcast wherever podcasts are listened to. Don't forget to rate it and subscribe and like it and leave a review and do all those things, because the more comments we get and rates and likes and all that stuff, then the more the algorithm will have other people find it that might also want to hear about two Jewish people talk about the nanny and how it relates to them. Because that's what podcasting is. All right, everybody. This was a podcast. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.
The Flashing Girl from Flushing, the nanny named Fran.
Oh, Mr. Sheffield.
I go, Miss Fine.